Hello everyone, welcome to TSAT Nimbunam. This is Vaishnavi from BCom Computer Application Final Year, Government Degree College for Women's, Nalgonda. And today I'm here to explain about one of the important topics of commerce, that is joint stock company. Before we head into the topic, let us understand what we are going to discuss today. The first one would be introduction to joint stock company. Second would be the features of joint stock company and along with the advantages and disadvantages of joint stock company, and fourth would be the kinds of companies. Fifth one would be formation of a company and registration of a company and memorandum of association and articles of association. First and foremost, it is very important for us to understand the history of joint stock company. Grand Chapter by the King James I in 1606, the Virginia Company was a joint stock company created to establish settlements in Jamestown in Virginia. And in India, first act governing company form of organization was passed in 1858. The Independence First Companies Act was passed in 1953. Currently, the Companies Act 2013 has been taken into account. After saying all this, we have a clear idea that the joint stock company is not a new chapter to India. It has been there present before independence itself. So, the current act which we are using these days is the New Companies Act 2013. Then, what is the need of joint stock company? The traditional forms of organization such as solo proprietorship, partnership would not cope up with the growth and expansion of trade, commerce and industry, the limitations of financial and managemental resources. So, due to these reasons, we need the joint stock company in this era. So, before we get into what is joint stock company and what are the features of it, first and foremost, we need to understand what is a company. A company is an artificial person created by law, having a separate legal entity with the perceptual succession and common zeal. Many authors has defined joint stock company in their own way, and among them James Spectenson was one of them, and he had defined the joint stock company in his own way as a company is an association of many persons who contribute money and money's worth to a common stock and employ it in some trade or business, and who share the profits and losses as arising therefrom. Along with him, Professor L.H. Hannay has described the joint stock company as a joint stock company is an voluntary association of individuals for profit having a capital divided into transferable shares, the ownership of which is the condition of membership. With this, we can understand that the joint stock company is nothing but a group or an organization formed together by two or more than two persons. When two or more than two persons join together with a common zeal, that is called as profits. When they combine together and run a business, that would be known as a joint stock company. And the persons enter into the business would be known as shareholders. And the shareholders would contribute capital into the business, which they will be liable to. Next, moving forward, we would see what are the different features of joint stock company. First one, artificial person. We know that a company is created by law and exists in it. So, what does then artificial person mean? It means a company is just like a person. It has its own property, own bank accounts, and the shares. It transfers the shares and can apply capital to it. So that is known as artificial person. And the second one would be the formation. What is formation? We all know that joint stock company is formed in 2013's Act, and it is very difficult in the formation of a company because it involves lot of responsibilities and lot of rules and regulations, from developing an idea and executing it, and also making an equal share for the shareholders along with the liabilities and getting into profits. So this is formation. And moving ahead, the separate legal entity. The separate legal entity is mentioned because when a company is formed, it is independent of any other things. That means unlike other professions like solo proprietorship or any partnership, this joint stock company is different from others, and it is independent from the shareholders, which makes it as a separate legal entity. Moving forward, liability. The liability means the liability depends upon the shareholders investing their money in it. Suppose if a shareholder has invested 100 rupees of shares in the company, then he will be liable to up to certain amount of rupees 100 only. That is known as liability. Then fifth one would be control. Well, there is lot of difference between control and management of a company. Whenever we are managing a company, we need to understand what are the different factors involved in it, like production, execution, and also salaries to the employees, etc. And a single person cannot take the effort to do all this by his own. Therefore, he needs a specialized person known as experts to handle it. That's why it is known as controlling in joint stock company. Next one would be risk bearing. As we all know, every company involves a risk in it. That means no other professions is there without any risk involved in it. So unlike in other professions like solo proprietorship or partnership, and along with joint stock company, there has some risk bearing factors in it. And next one is common zeal. Every company is formed with an objective to achieve something, probably say profits. So the main objective of the business would be profits or serving the society, or it can be using the natural resources too. So it is one of the features of joint stock company for having the common zeal in it. Next one would be the transferability of shares. The shares so bought by the shareholders can be transferable at any time whenever the shareholder requires to do that. Shareholder also has a market, ready-made market, which is known as stock markets, where he can probably sell or purchase different types of shares in it, where some of the companies may restrict selling their shares to outsiders, but it does not completely stop selling it, but it only extends to some extent. The next one is perpetual succession. What does this term defines? It means permanent existence. We all know we start a company so that it prolongs for so long, so that it can be helpful for future. The shareholders of the company may or may not be present from the starting to the ending of the existence, but the company would be followed with some rules and regulations, and it would never lose its continuity. That is known as perpetual succession. Moving forward, now let us discuss about advantages of joint stock company. Well, the first one would be limited liability. We all had discussed in the earlier features that limited liability means a shareholder is liable only to the amount which he paid the share capital. That means if a shareholder wants to pay an unpaid liability, then he can only pay the unpaid ones but not the remaining. That is known as limited liability. Next one would be the transfer of shares. The shares of a company can be transferred from one person to the another person. Well, transferring the shares can be of different types due to the maturity of the client or insolvency or the debt or any other reason, but the shares can be transferred by using the ready-made markets like stock markets, etc. Next one is perpetual existence. As we discussed above, perpetual existence is nothing but the permanent existence. It means the continuity of the business. The shareholders of the company are only known as creditors and cannot be prolonged for too long. But the company, having a common zeal and objective, can be continued to offer a long period. And next one is scope of expansion. Whenever we start a company, we can expand the company in many terms, like sharing the debentures or then open shares for others. In this way, we can expand in the joint stock company. And one of the important factor in joint stock company is that we can also allow loans from the bank, since it has a proper registration and also it is known for its objective. So the next one would be professional management. Whenever most of the companies rely in the professional management, but it not in the case of joint stock company, since the company is formed with many other members, like more than 7 members. It also have the scope so that we can buy or sell the goods whenever we need, and we can also make a proper management of the resources, and also we can hire the experts in the professionals in the sectors, so that we can understand what is going on in our business. So this is one of the advantages of joint stock company. Moving forward to disadvantages of joint stock company. First one would be difficulty in formation. Whenever we are forming a company, we have to look after the different aspects in it, about how the company is going to be formed, who are going to be the shareholders of the company, and how we are going to register the company. And since all this take a long time and it's prolonged for the very long time in registration and for analyzing this, it makes it as a disadvantages in joint stock company. Then moving forward, the lack of secrecy. Whenever we are discussing something about the company, all the shareholders along with the directors has to present in the board meeting for passing a common seal. So it lacks the secrecy, because no meeting can be done with 1 or 2 members, so it lacks secrecy. And next one would be impersonal work environment. The work environment remembers us about the directors of the company would be having a common zeal for earning profits, but the workers who are present in the company, who are working for the company, would have the basic idea to that, so that they earn salary to earn their family. So there will be a lot of clashes between both of them. Without any proper interference of managers, it will be a lot of difficulty with lot of differences in the thoughts and ideology. So it makes the work environment impersonal. Next one would be numerous regulations. Any company would be formed with lots of rules and regulations. No other company can be formed with a simple rule and a simple agenda. So these rules and regulations makes the company as to prolong for a long time, so which makes it as a disadvantage. Next one would be delay in decision making. Whenever the company is in crisis, there is a need so that all the persons, like all the shareholders of the company, to move forward and come into the meeting, attend it, and to take a decision immediately. But the meeting cannot be done or attended in a short notice. It makes a delay in decision making, and it also makes it as a disadvantage because there may be a loss of chance while doing the decision making due to lot of members present in the joint stock company. Next one would be organic management. It means that the people who are present in the, like managers and the shareholders, cannot take the part in the company activities at a time. So they need a person so that instead of all other members, he take care of the company activities, and in the absence of all others, he manages the companies well. So basically he will be elected by all the remaining shareholders and given the responsibility to manage it. But it have a major disadvantage that one person alone cannot take all the burden, so which makes it as a disadvantage. Moving forward, there would be a conflict of interest. As discussed so far, the shareholders or the directors would have the main and the common zeal to earn profits, or maybe going to the public to publish their product or any items. But the objectives of the customers would be to have cheap items within the normal price. And also the employees in the companies expect higher prices, which inflicts in the conflict of interest and making it as a disadvantage. Moving forward, we have the different kinds of companies. First one would be the private company, second one is public company, and third one is statutory company, fourth one is registered company, fifth would be limited company and unlimited companies, and government company along with foreign company and holding and subsidiary companies. Let us know the different kinds of companies in detail. Private companies and public company have the most things in common and most things in different. Let us understand by keeping this side by side about the private along with the public company. The minimum persons in a private company would be limited up to 2%, and in case of public company, the minimum members would be limited up to 7%. And in case of private company, it cannot be more than 200 members. And in case of public company, there would be no such restriction in the number of members present in that company. And in private company, restrictions on transfer of share would be seen. But in case of public company, no restriction on transfer of shares. The next one would be the cannot issue the prospectus in case of public company, and in case of private company it can issue prospectus. In case of private company, 2 minimum directors are allowed, but in case of public company 3 minimum directors are allowed. In case of public company, directors are not required, but in case of public company at least 2/3 of will be required. Moving ahead, the private company is the organ of 2 members, and in case of public company the quorum is of 5 members. In case of private company, no restrictions on managemental remuneration, but in case of public company 11% of the net profits should be given to the managemental remuneration. In case of private company, it cannot accept public deposits, and moving forward to the public company, it is free to accept. The second type of companies would be the statutory company. A company may be incorporated by means of special act of the Parliament or a legislature. Example: railways, waterworks, gas, electricity generation, etc. Well, the statutory company means it is a part of a government company which involves railways, waterworks, gas, electricity generation, etc., which makes it as a statutory company. And the second point would be that the statutory company are governed by its acts, which are placed on table of the Parliament or the state legislature. The acts of the statutory company and the profits and losses of the statutory company would be filed and would be placed in the Parliament of a state or a legislature. And moving forward to another kinds of company is known as registered company. Companies registered under Companies Act 2013 would be known for the registered companies. A company so registered under the Act may be incorporated as limited liability and unlimited liability. That means the registered company will be divided into 2 different types known as limited liability company and unlimited liability company. And the another types of company would be known as limited liability company. As the name itself suggests that the liabilities of the company would be limited. So that is what our first point is: companies limited by shares and company limited by guarantee. Company limited by guarantee having share capital. These are the different types of companies would come under the limited liability companies. That means it may be limited by the shares, or it may be limited by the guarantee, or it may be limited by the guarantee having share capital. Then another type of company would be unlimited liability company. A company having no limit on liabilities. That means the company so formed will never have any limit for producing their liabilities, and the liability of each member extends to the whole amount of company debts and liabilities. The liabilities so called of each member extends to the company's debts and also to the liabilities, which makes it as an unlimited liability company. The next one would be the foreign company. Company or body incorporated outside India. That means a company which has its roots from outside India but it places its business in India would be known as a foreign company. That means it conducts any business activity in India in any other manner. That means the company would be present in India working its nature, but the roots or the origin of the company would be in foreign. That's why it would be known as a foreign company. Next one would be the holding and subsidiary companies. Well, if one company controls another company, then in such a case, the controlling company is termed as the holding company, and the company so controlled is called as subsidiary company. By this, we can understand what are the different types of companies. Moving ahead, we have what formation of a company. The formation of the company suggests that it is a process of formatting a company. The person who takes initiative to start the company is called as promoter. Whole the responsibility will be laid on the promoter, so that what kind of activity he would be taken for forming a company would be taken as the first important action in the business. And the states in forming a company. First of all, there are different stages in forming a company. The first stage would be that discovery of an idea. The idea may relate to starting of a new business or taking over the existence undertaking. That means whenever we have planned, that means the promoter has planned to start a business, then he can take a new business idea or he can promote the existent undertaking. And the next point would be that it may be exploit a new area of natural resources or may more profitable venture too. And that means the idea may be of new area of natural resources including air, water, sand, etc. And it can also be a profitable venture with an addend of profits in it. This is the first and important step in the stages of formatting a company. And the second step in formatting a company would be the investigation. Detailed investigation involves study of market demand, availability and cost of raw materials, machinery and other factors of production. Whenever the promoter decides to start a company, he need to keep in mind and he need to investigate the different topics involved, like market demand, availability of cost of raw materials with the machinery, and also the factors of production which involves the labor and the landscape also. So this is the second step in formatting a company. Then it also involves study of potential composition, probably selling price and profits. Such are conducted by experts, engineers, financial experts or many others. As we see earlier, the second step would also involve like investigating about the potential composition, about selling price and profits, because all the business activities involves in profits. It is very important for the promoter to understand what is the selling price in the market, so that what he has to invest in it, will it be profitable or not, he need to investigate for the better business. So the next step would be investing in the experts, engineers, financial experts and many others. Like a promoter himself cannot take up the job of investigating himself. Definitely he needs the financial experts and also experts in engineering to understand the topic of it. This is the second most step in the formatting a company. And the third step would be assembling. Various elements and factors of production such as labor, capital, organization are to be assembled. That means after forming all the different, like having an idea and investigating on it, the second one would be arranging the different factors of a production, like how much labor would be required and how much capital would be required, and where the organization has to be established. By taking these factors into consider, he also requires minimum number of shareholders to form a company. That means he need to also decide how many shareholders would be invited for taking in it. The next step in formatting a company would be financing the proposition. That means he need to decide the method of arising capital for short term along with long term needs. If necessary, he must take agreements with underwriting and stock exchange. Financing the proposition means he need to decide where the capital would be contributed. He need to decide the how much and how amount of capital should be divided into the long term along with the short term needs. The next step in the joint stock company would be the registration of the company, which is also known as one of the important factors in every business organization, without which a company would not be considered as himself or in the name of his. So the registration of the company. The registration of the company comes into existence after the incorporation as the provisions of Indian Companies Act 1956. That means the registration of the company has been started in the Indian Companies Act 1956 itself. And he also need to decide the company's name. While we are registering a company on certain name, first of all we need to decide what would be the name of the company, and it should be necessarily stamped, and register fees and filling fees are to be paid. That means he have to register formally by paying all the taxes and also register fees. The next one would be the 7 persons are required to public company and 2 persons are required to form a private company. That means a public company can start its own business or own firm by having 7 members, but in the case of private company there have to be at least 2 persons for starting a business. And what are the documents to be filled? Memorandum of Association, Articles of Association, List of names and addresses of the proposed directors, a written consent for the directors to act such, and declaration of directors regarding qualification, documents showing the address of register office, and the next one would be the statutory declaration. So that are the important documents to be filled in it. Moving forward, what is Memorandum of Association? The Memorandum of Association involves it is an constitution of a company and provides foundation on which its structure is built. The word constitution means that the company has to bound to the Memorandum of Association if it wanted to establish a public figure. So the next one would be it defects scope of company activities as well as relation with the outside world. The Memorandum of Association also has the meaning and also gives the scope of relation with the outside world. And we need to understand what is the purpose of Memorandum of Association. So, the shareholders should know where they are investing money and risk involved in it. Whenever we are performing a business, we involve shareholders in it. Generally, shareholders contribute their capital into the business. So, it is very important for the promoter to advertise the shareholders first so that they feel secure to invest in it, and shareholders do not fear the risk of losing their money by investing in it. And Memorandum of Association also helps in the scope of activities. That means the Memorandum of Association also consists the different types of activities which are performed in it. The contents of Memorandum. The first one would be the name clause. The company name which doesn't resemble any company including government. First, we need to select a company name which does not resemble any other government agencies or any other government companies, and it should not be identical to already existing company. That means the name so far used has not been used by any other company which looks like a copied one. So the next one would be it must be approved by the central government. The name which we are using should have been approved by the central government and registered. The next one would be registered office. Every company should have a registered office. That means that every company so formed should have a separate place so that the business activity should be taken in that place only. That is known as registered office. The place of registered office can be intimated to the registrar within 30 days of incorporation. That means the place which have been selected can be intimated to the officer of registration within 13 days of incorporation. The next clause would be the object clause. The object clause determines the rights and powers of a company and also defines its sphere of activities. That means object clause is one of the important clause. That means it shows all the rights and powers of the company. That is why it is very difficult to change or alter this clause. The next clause would be the liability clause. The liability clause states that liability of the members is limited to the value of shares held by them. As discussed so far, the liability clause would only be limited to the value of shares spent by the shareholders, and the members will be liable to pay only the unpaid balance of the shares. Whenever there is a crisis of huge liabilities, then the shareholder would be only liable to pay the unpaid balance of the shares. That is known as liability clause. The next clause would be the capital clause. This clause says the division of capital into equity share capital and preference share capital, and it also divides along number of shares in each category. The capital clause is important because it determines the division of capital into the equity along with the preference share, and it also defines how much number of shares should be divided into each category. The next clause will be the association clause. This clause contains the name of signatories to the Memorandum of Association. It must be signed by at least 7 members in public and at least 2 members in private limited company. Each subscriber should take at least 1 share. Moving ahead, the Articles of Association. It contains rules and regulations of the internal management of the company. The Articles of Association is generally about the rules and regulations the company has to follow in it. And it also describes item-wise the manner in which different aspects of a company. It contains rights and duties of members and also powers, liability of directors and official. That means it also contains the powers of liabilities and also the directors too. It creates contract between the members of the company. And moving forward, the nature of Articles of Association. The Articles of Association is subordinate to the Memorandum of Association. That means the Articles of Association and the Memorandum of Association are both interlinked. The Articles are controlled by the Memorandum. That means all the articles are being controlled by the Memorandum. And the second one would be that articles help in achieving the objectives, and articles are only internal regulations. The last point would be that articles lay down the regulations for governance of the company. So now we have understood what are the topics of joint stock company. It has a history and also features along with advantages and disadvantages and kinds of company and formation of a company and registration of a company along with Memorandum of Association and Articles of Association. So I hope you guys all understand what is a joint stock company. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.